third, getting my numbers mixed up here, would be collaborative learning. You're doing it together. And for collaborative learning, remember that each group member has a unique contribution. So this is a little bit tricky, takes a while to get down well. That's where the idea of assigning roles can be very helpful, because you will have those students who will either take over the group, or you'll have those students who will just sit back and let the other person take over the group. So that's not doing either one of them the best good for their own learning. So things like assigning roles can be very useful, or giving it enough structure such as everybody has 30 seconds to talk, and make sure that that happens. Maybe you also have a timekeeper or a monitor within that group. So groups do need to change too based on needs. If you're doing collaborative work, it is very helpful in most cases. There may be some students with special needs who you know if they assign them to work with somebody else, it's not going to go well. But for the most part, you are going to want to assign people based on the purpose of the activity and the other dynamic factors of your student characteristics. Sometimes you might want students with similar levels to be working together. Sometimes you might need to mix it up a bit. So if you're mixing it up a bit as well, then there might be different reasons. You might want to mix it up based on language competency strengths. You might want to do it based on what you know, which of your students are the strongest in that particular skill or content area. Or you might do it based so that you get a variety of students from different backgrounds and different abilities working together in the same group. For certain activities, that might be really important. And so your groups are going to change. Please consider not setting a group up for the beginning of the year and then keeping it that way the whole year. This also gives everybody a chance for face-to-face interaction, as opposed to, one person talking, one person listening, one person doing all the talking, one person sitting back and doing all the listening. They really need that dynamic interaction with each other. That's how you build vocabulary and competence. That's how you demonstrate that you're really comfortable with the knowledge or skills that you've been working on. And so this is also where you need to identify some way to track individual and group accountability. You could do that simply through a real simple mechanism. I had index cards, sort of like what Danny had with his equity cards, with everybody's name on it. As I walked around, I saw they were on task, they got a point, those turned into bonus points later on, which could help their grade out a little bit, and that kind of thing. There are lots of different ways to, you might have a person who monitors within the group that everybody is participating. You might have the people in the group score each other on their participation. You might use something, anybody hear of Classcraft? Okay, so it's a good piece of software, a gaming type environment that you create for your students, which really relies heavily on teamwork, and you can use that as a way to encourage group accountability. And if you haven't seen Classcraft, go ahead and look for classcraft.com online, and you can see some of the things there. And the nice thing about that too is you can transfer from, you can have multiple, a student can have a sort of their own persona that they create in one class and carry it into other classes who are also using the software as well. So a little bit of continuity, but yet unique to your own class. My take is you determine the groups.
Always.
Sometimes toward the end of the year, if they've been really on task and doing a great job, I'll let them pick groups, or maybe only for specific tasks. But I think groups need to be very purposefully created. How many of you guys like doing group work? Oh, I hated doing group work. But 8th grade, again, it's difficult, especially at a middle school level. But for me, the problem was group size. I had to figure out what worked for me for size. If you're a little hesitant about starting with group work, I would start with partners. And then, you always see 4 chairs together. I almost never did 4 in a group. I did 3. It was better than partners. If somebody was absent, then you still had another person there. But for middle school, I found that 4 was pretty hard for them to handle sometimes. So I found 3 to be more comfortable, especially in English where you're doing a lot of, discussion. And this is an area too where I would recommend practicing your first, couple of weeks. You're setting up your routines. How do you want people to get into groups? Okay, we're going to practice getting into a group of 2. Do some fun, thing for them to be able to get that. Have them compete against each other. Even high school students really get into the competition thing. That's why Classcraft works. And that's what probably because they haven't been structured well enough to ensure that everybody's piece is integral to the completion of the whole thing. That's a tricky one to get down. I would say it takes a while to get to the point, and it takes conscious effort on the teacher's part to make it work. But yeah, that's another reason why I like 3. There's fewer opportunities for somebody to sit back and not do something, because the fewer people you have, the more you have to rely on each other to get it done. So start slow with the group thing. Work your way to start with, well, you may not be comfortable with it, but start close to your comfort level, work out from there. And that's where your role as the guider of the process is really important. You're working the room, you're wandering, you're not sitting back at your desk in the corner. I'm one of those people that would believe in taking teachers' desks out of their rooms because you need to be part of the flow of the classroom, and you can't do that if you're back there and you've got group work that's going crazy because you're not walking around and monitoring it. Okay, so that's why I always wear comfortable shoes. Okay, so collaborative effort we know then requires the use of interpersonal skills, like Danny was saying. Everybody has a chance to talk, and this is where maybe smaller groups, 4 or less, is a better thing, especially for those kids with special needs or those EL students or people who are shy. In a smaller group, they're going to be more likely to talk, but also if you structure it in a way where everybody has a chance, the ABCD or just whatever it might be, that you set it up so that there's that opportunity to do it. And that you have some element of group self-assessment. For example, in the case where the one student ends up doing all the work for everybody else, there should be a mechanism for everybody to report what went well and what did not go well with the group work, and that should be given consideration in whatever grade each individual student ends up with for that particular project. This also does, as I said, you're working the room. It gives you a chance to check for understanding with individuals and with the groups themselves. And it can occur, the nice thing about group work is once you get it working well, you can have groups on task doing what they need to do, and then that gives you a chance to maybe deal with or pull out those, or maybe the way you've strategically created groups or reshaped your groups, that gives you a chance to work with those students who are struggling a little more in depth. Maybe you go back to that particular group and give them more direct instruction or whatever it might be. So the whole collaborative process can also enable you to have more time to focus on the needs of the students who are struggling, that need a little more support. Okay, so let's get a couple of examples really quickly. And we're going to do like reciprocal teaching, summarizing, questioning, clarifying, predicting, listening and viewing stations, visual displays, the posters that Danny was talking about, literature circles are a great way to do collaborative learning, labs and simulations, and the whole jigsaw where each group has responsibility for a certain piece of the pie of content, and then all the pieces get pulled together and each group shares what they've learned with the rest of the class. Also skills practice, which is also a good time to monitor each other's skills. That's a good PE technique, or perhaps in the kinds of classes that are more skills-based.